Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'd like to do is kind of go over what are the things that you're going to need to know to be able to write an equation in slope-intercept form as well as identify the slope. So obviously, if you're identifying the slope in the y-intercept, you kind of would help to know what exactly slope is and what exactly the y-intercept is. Well, slope is basically going to be our ratio between the change in the y values and over the change in the x values for any 2 points that lie on a line, where the y-intercept is going to be a coordinate point of where the graph is going to cross the y-axis. And it's important to know that at the y-intercept, our coordinate for x will be 0. To identify, it's very helpful to know what exactly is slope-intercept form, because there are going to be some problems in this course where you're going to have an equation and you're just going to have to rewrite it into slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is described as y equals mx plus b, where the coefficient of your variable x is what we represent as our slope, and b is our y-intercept. Now, kind of going back to slope, remember slope is a ratio. So even if you have m, a lot of times you might want to write it as m over 1, or whatever your fraction is, but you always want to write it as a ratio, as rise over run. So if you just have a whole number, write it over 1, or if slope is already as a fraction, then that's fine. You have your rise over run, or your change in your y values over the change in the x values between any 2 points. The y-intercept, it's also important to understand, as I mentioned, the x value has 0, and the y value is whatever your value for y is on the coordinate point. So remember that slope represents a ratio, y-intercept represents a point. Point slope form is also going to be very helpful, especially when I have problems that are giving you 2 points. Because what you can do for slope point form is when you have 2 points, xy and xy. All right, let's pretend you had different numbers there. We want to be able to differentiate between them, so we put this one x1, x2, y1, y2, and then we can use our point slope equation to plug in both of those points. And once we plug in both of those points, we can solve for our m. Or if we only had 1 point and the slope, we could plug in one of those points, plug in our slope, and then simplify it to slope-intercept form. So knowing point slope form is very, very helpful, and a lot of times writing an equation in slope-intercept form. And then once it's in slope-intercept form, it's helpful to then to identify the slope and the y-intercept. And then lastly, ladies and gentlemen, is the slope formula. And if you're given 2 points, rather than using point slope form, you can also use the slope formula, which is derived from the point slope form. Notice if I just divided by x2 minus x1 on both sides, I'd get the slope formula, which is x2 minus x1. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is kind of the basic things that you need to know to be able to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Thanks.